Hey, Rebecca, thanks for coming on to Social Dream Machine. For those that don't know you, would you just mind introducing yourself? I know you are a really good copywriter.
So I'm Rebecca. I work as a kind of solopreneur copywriter, and I work a lot in the kind of creator niche. So I work with some notable creators, Taylor Simmons, Jody Cook, and also on Instagram, a guy called Tim Biohacker who's quite famous, and some other startups. And so I'm kind of deep in the creator copywriting startup world and work a lot with emails, but also content and building funnels and landing pages and things like that.
Yeah, those are all some really great writers there. So, what would you do? Like, let's just talk a little bit, framing up this episode. If you're about to make your first $1,000 online, I know that emotional writing is part of like the journey. And so, when you're looking at someone's writing that's already like a good writer, say like Talon as well, like how do you make it better? But we'll get more into like monetization strategies maybe a little bit later. But in general, like what are you looking for that like what would turn you off or like make you go head towards something if you like it? Is it like the idea that you look at first, or how do you break things down in your head?
Yeah, obviously first is the kind of the idea. Like what the first thing I want to know about an idea is what does it mean for the person reading it? And what are they going to get out of that kind of story or idea personally? And what does that message do for the creator or the person writing it? So for example, if it's a story about how, someone worked at a pizza restaurant and then, now they're here and they're no one special, and their audience is people who want to be writers or want to be entrepreneurs, and that person is an entrepreneur, this is a hero story or a rags to riches story that is going to resonate. So that's a very classic idea, but it's kind of the idea of what ideas can you share that tell a story that relate to your audience. Because I always have this saying that's like, it's not your story, it's their story told through your story.
So they're looking at themselves through you essentially. And it seems like a lot of these stories have some sort of transformation or some sort of like contrast of like Parker Worth comes to mind too, of like being a janitor and now he's making double six figures living in Brazil, that type of thing, where it's just kind of like the low point and a high point, but then somewhere in there it's sprinkled with like relatability. Dakota comes to mind too, Dakota Robertson, because he claims to work at like Domino's Pizza and now he has like a 250K launch. So is it part of that? Is it because they're able to say I worked at Domino's? Because I think to some sort of degree we all think that some of our past experiences are pretty cringe, right? So is that part of the battle, just letting go your ego and showing that you can be cringe, but also have made it?
You've just repeated to me people's stories that you remember, you know? And I think you know, that's the key of the content. You remember that hero story. It's something like there's some stat that's like if it's a good story and it resonates, you remember it. You're 23 times more likely to remember it. If you think if you're scrolling through content all of the time, how much of it do you actually remember? Well, like the stories, the relatable stories are probably the ones that you remember most.
Is there any other ways of framing up stories? Do they always need to kind of have that contrast, or like how do you know if like an idea is good? I guess like how do you start generating ideas? Are you looking at other creators and go, oh, I like that, and just like jotting it down and like redoing it for yourself, like with a different spin?
For me as a copywriter, the way I would think about ideas is first like not coming up with an idea from scratch to promote something or talk about something I care about, but think about who I want to target and like what they care about and what they want to hear. So, for example, say I'm selling, I don't know, business courses. I might want to consume content that analyzes the best business professionals in the world. So you'll see, like, I think on Twitter was trending a while ago. It's like, this is, Steve Jobs, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you can deconstruct those principles and you're selling a business course, if I've learned something from you, I'm then going to kind of trust the idea that I could probably get some value from you. So it's always looking at like, instead of like, what can I say? It's like, do they want to hear? And how can I position myself as something that's authoritative in that niche, that someone is trusted and someone who represents my ideas, represents my feelings, and represents who I want to become. I think that's the kind of the build-up of a creator in many ways.
That becomes a challenge, I've realized. And one thing that I made the mistake of when I was first starting out is just not validating ideas, just sort of thinking that from where I was thinking and just sort of writing from my own brain instead of. I was looking at John Brazio the other day, and he talked about using Quora, like question and answers, and looking at ideas that had like millions of views that were already validated. And that was like a bit of a mistake that I was making. How do you know if an idea is validated? Is that kind of what you do as well? Just look at ones that have like a lot of views, or how do you think like them? Are you like reading Amazon reviews to get in the brains of these people? That part has always been tricky to me.
I think there's two sides to this. There's like this kind of echo chamber of the creator economy. Okay, this idea is validated, is targeting this emotion. I can recreate this idea and relate it to myself. And I think there's a huge amount of value in doing that. But then there's the kind of other side that is like you as an individual need to come across. And I think in a way we have a lot of creators that kind of like set the bar for content. I hope this answers your question in the right way, but like, and we might like kind of think, okay, that works well. Like, how can I repackage this? And I think that's a really valuable thing to do. But that makes them the niche of one and you the kind of echo chamber. So I think there's a balance of that. And I think what I look for when I'm, thinking about content or thinking about, a particular angle or a way to make people buy stuff, because of course in copywriting, it's the same thing. You've got one creator or business selling something to a similar business that's doing better. They might copy them. It's kind of like, well, what is the underlying themes? What are the underlying emotions and what are the underlying stories that make this work?
What sort of are you thinking about the emotion ahead of time though that you want someone to feel, like inspired or like depressed or sad or hopeful? Or because it seems like emotion is a pool, and I don't know if like certain emotions make people. Obviously, I think emotions kind of bypass like the kind of prehistoric part of our brain, so that people could just think more in terms of story. It seems like that's part of it. Just so like it seems like as humans we kind of communicate all through like story and emotion or whatever. So, but are you thinking actually about the emotions that you want to trigger ahead of time?
Well, there's two sides. It's like, does this already have an emotion associated with it? And I need to address that first before I'm going to create a new emotion. So if I'm trying to sell a particular idea, whether that's like literally selling something or selling an idea as a part of a piece of content that I want people to react to, is what is the preconceived emotion? Am I going to deconstruct that emotion or am I going to ride on the wave? I think we create emotions like, I don't think they kind of come first. It's almost like they come from stories, they come from reactions, they come from targeting those feelings that we have deep down and bringing them to the surface in a way that you might not have articulated it yourself. But when you go it, you go, yes, that's it. Or, that's how I feel. And so that's really what the kind of process is to do that.
Before we get into like maybe like some ideas for like monetizing things, maybe we could hop into like YouTube really quick and kind of take a look at some ideas just to see like what we both like and just kind of an analysis of like what's out there. Let's take a look really quick. Let's take a look at a couple of Dakota's ideas, and then maybe we'll hop over to a couple other creators' ideas. All right, let's just look at the title. What do you think of this idea? How to grow from 0 to 10,000 followers in 6 months on Twitter or X?
It's a really good thumbnail, right? Because it's got time frame, desirable outcome, like, and it's kind of specific, right? So like, I want to grow on Twitter. The pain point is that like, I don't know how, and I'm scared it's going to take a long time, and I'm fear of rejection. So this is authoritative. This is how you can get this many 10,000 followers in 6 months. So it's alleviating a lot of those emotions that might be like, yeah, fear of rejection. I don't know how to do it. It's going to take a long time.
So it's interesting because it's a smart move. Like what works, change and reuse into something else. This third one's interesting because it says $600 day. And if you think about it, If you make 600 bucks in a day, that's pretty good living in most parts of the world. Uh, top five one person businesses to start in 2024. Who do you think that that's aimed at?
It's the typical kind of like either someone who is in kind of a job that they don't like, they're not paid enough money, they really want to find an opportunity, they have this idea of a dream life in their mind, they think they can do it because they believe that they're capable of more than they're achieving right now, and they just need a formula. And this man, Dakota, sells the secret, the formula, the way you can, achieve your potential, or the secrets for growth. And so these are all emotions that are really, really powerful, because it feels like it's kind of playing on the idea that like people think they can, they just need to know how. And it's quite a masculine selling point. Whereas, you know, it's got low perceived effort. It's got the idea of who you're going to become and how you're going to do it.
Let's just check out maybe Laura Costa then, since she's another popular creator on LinkedIn, and see if we see any similarities. The first one of hers looks similar to Dakota's.
Now you think about like the kind of go-getter attitude of Dakota, where it's like, this is how you're going to do it. And then like hers is much more fun, which is like attract, people to your profile. She's saying inbound lead. She's not saying how to get something. So instead of the chase, it's the attraction. And so these are like masculine and feminine personas to achieve a similar goal, but a completely different sales tactic.
Oh yeah, so just like a completely different emotion is what you were saying.
Yeah, 100%. So like one of the things we kind of see a lot in copywriting is like when you're writing to someone, and whether you're trying to get your first $1,000 or you're trying to target a particular person, like knowing if they're a man and a woman, or a woman, hopefully it doesn't sound sexist, is actually a very powerful thing, because women are kind of like have a slightly different angle to buy things than men.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Let's look at one more of hers and then we'll switch on to something different. But okay, so anyone can make $10,000 with a month with this template. What do you think of that? It's a pretty big idea.
It's a really big idea. Again, it's kind of this idea of like low perceived effort. So people actually have a lot of kind of anxiety surrounding money, or kind of like insecurities surrounding money. To be able to kind of like say anyone that kind of says, oh, well, you know, my objections are invalid.
It's inclusive, basically. It's just I've heard John Brosio say I was a waiter and now I make X amount. Anyone could do it. Like I guess anyone just popped up right there, right again. So I totally get that. And now shifting a little, now that we kind of understand like what big ideas are, like what makes like I guess the offer is kind of an idea to some sort of degree, right? Like what you're offering is what's going to make you money, right? So how do you look at like if we were going to, as a new creator, like how would you go about making your first $1,000? Because I've seen people work for free and then trade their time for like I don't know, like $100 session, $200 session, or then they'll try to package things into a way that makes it so that it's more sustainable, like through like I don't know, like 8 sessions over 3 months. I feel like you're a coach type thing. So if like you're a brand new creator or you're advising someone new, what are some strategies that you would use to make your first $1,000 online? And we can kind of keep in mind the language is important as well.
Wait, in this scenario, do they know their niche?
They do know their niche. Yeah. Let's just say that they're a coach. They're a life coach.
I mean, it's kind of like the classic, but I'll try and add some new value to it. I would, I don't want to say work for free, actually. I've never worked for free. But what I would say is provide value first. And this could be interpreted as work for free. Who do you want as your ideal client? And how can you provide them with value by looking at their social profiles, by looking at their websites, or, by knowing their struggles? If you're a life coach, maybe it's a friend of a friend, maybe it is even a friend. Like, can you find someone in your network who you can provide value to? If you can't provide value to anyone that you know in your network, then maybe you're not on the right thing. if you can, provide value first. And even now, as like a seasoned copywriter who has got big names behind them, hundreds of millions of views across creators I've worked with, I still provide value first. I still go in and go, hey, like I've done this for you, or I've noticed this. And it's not a small bit of value, it's usually a decent amount of value. I usually try and spend an hour or two on something for them that I know is going to provide value and that they're going to see as valuable. And then because I've already made that first step, I think I can give them more. So if I wanted to make my first $5,000 as a life coach and I had a coaching program or whatever, like, I would think, okay, if say I had like an idea of steps I want to take people through on my life coaching program, I would identify within my network someone who could benefit from one of those steps and how they could benefit. And I give that information to them. I personalize that information to them. Say, hey, like, I've noticed you, I don't know, like, you really struggle to express yourself. Like, these principles, like, work for X or work for me, or these are scientifically proven to, here's how I think you could apply it. Something like that.
What would you do though? Like you'd send like a note just saying, "Hey, I noticed you struggle with this emotion or whatever it is that you do," and like maybe give them some tips, that type of thing, that kind of frame.
Yeah, definitely. And that's probably where the copywriting comes in, being non-judgmental, being very kind of, you know, gentle with your first message and sort of one thing we kind of say in copywriting is like depersonalize the pain and personalize the solution. So, hey, I've noticed that like self-confidence is something that's difficult for many people. Here's what I think you could do about it. That kind of like gentle introduction would be something I'd do. And actually, I would say, like, from my own experience getting leads and making money online, I definitely make six figures online, is I actually don't send many cold leads, and I also don't attract loads of people. I do get referrals from great people, luckily now. But how I started is not targeting that many people, but just targeting them really well by giving them, knowing I want to work with them, knowing how I can help them very clearly, and being able to communicate that very clearly.
Yeah, I believe you said you work on some of Talon's offers too, right? I don't know if it was digital identity or what, but how did you guys go about like that as far as like what makes, I guess, a good offer? Do you think that there needs to be some sort of guarantee in it, or there's a guarantee whether or not someone says there is? And just in general, like a lot of social proof, or like how do you look at offers?
Taylor and his business partner Dale are very product focused. They really know what's going to provide value, what's going to work, how they're going to provide value, all these frameworks. If you go on the backside of their courses, it is like dense, and they provide an enormous amount of value. They get on more calls than anyone else. They love it. On the front end, like, how do you communicate that? So for us, like, and it's been a learning process, and I still think there's things we need to improve, but it's like, how do we communicate Taylor's personality? How do we communicate Taylor's message and story of the underdog and things like that? But also, how do we communicate that not only is this valuable, but how much we want to give value? Because I think that is a unique selling point of Taylor. It's not that he's just valuable and he's got good stuff and he's a nice guy, but like, he cares a lot. And I think that's what makes him stand out in the market. So I would think about how you're providing value, but also what you uniquely give people. And if you don't know what that is, try and work on finding that out, because we all have a unique thing that we can give people, and you can ask your friends, what do I, what do you value in me? Like, how do I help you? Things like that. So that would be a big part of it.
Is Dale part of the marketing too? Because I seem to see Talon more. I don't know if it's just because I know Talon more, and I see Talon, or I'm sorry, Dale in the calls as well. But it seems like Talon's more the face.
Taylor is absolutely the face of the brand. But yeah, they're business partners. Um, but yeah, but it also, like, I would say, like, for example, I work with another creator called Tim Biohacker on Instagram. He's got about 500,000 followers now. And he is completely different. I mean, I'm not such a fan of this anymore, but like it's more fear-based marketing around health, like all the things in your environment that are harming you and what you can do about it. And then the kind of like way you might sell to that audience is so different to the way like telling might sell. So I would think about what is your, I mean, obviously when you make your first $1,000, you might not have really clearly like your USP or, your way of communicating, but like, what is your approach to your business or your approach to solving the problem you want to solve? And how can you package that? Because if you go along those lines of like, oh, this is how this person sells and this is how this person sells and mush them together and this is how I should sell it, you're not selling you and you're not selling your product. You're selling what you think is selling.
It was kind of a brain unlock for me at first when I noticed that people would pay in general for information like info products. Like I didn't understand it because I was like, why would someone pay for something when you can just go watch it for free on YouTube? Or I don't know. I guess I pay for books or things like that, but was that something too that a lot of beginning creators need to get over, like the fact that people will pay for courses and things like they'll pay for value if they feel that it's valuable or that it's going to teach them something or get them ahead.
I think a big part of the creator economy is a market of attention. Yes, providing value, but attention driven value. And so the real value, the really nitty gritty, the detailed stuff that you want to share is not going to do well on LinkedIn. So where do you put it? You put it in your course or you put it in your product that you sell. Because once people have made that emotional commitment and done that emotional buy-in and monetary buy-in, they value what you say so much more. So I mean, the idea that information is for free and that it's devalued, and I think that because people are competing for that attention, they're not really providing that like depth, and that's what you get by buying something. So
And I'm part of micro creators too. I joined the community, and it's interesting because I've noticed, like, I've watched most of the videos in there. I would say like 70%. I'm not done through them, and that's how I found you actually. But it's interesting because I feel like once you pay for something, you're more inclined to use it for some reason, or at least you feel bad if you don't. You're like, I'm gonna go like make sure that it keeps you accountable to some sort of degree, and maybe people are paying for the accountability potentially.
there's this buy-in that we kind of have, and once you've made a decision about something and you believe it's your decision, you value that decision so much more. You know, when you've chosen your goldfish at the pet shop, like you then, you buy into that goldfish when they were the same as the other six goldfish. Not saying it all courses is the same, but you know what I mean. It's like it's the same concept.
That's why they always say like try to make like micro commitments of things, I guess, like get people to say yes, like reply to this newsletter so I know that you got it and tell me what you like or whatever, because it's like this thing of like getting more time under attention or deeper in the funnel. It's kind of weird to think about it that way, but I guess to some sort of degree it kind of is that. I guess my last question for you is like, what do you think? I always hear that big term too, like time under attention, like meaning like the more time you occupy in someone's brain, like meaning like LinkedIn social selling, but like maybe only 0.004% of these people are actually in my email list, right? So that's like a deeper connection because they chose to go over here for whatever reason. Hopefully it was for a good reason, but then they're in there and they're like, you're more in their mind. Is that the way you look at it as well?
Yeah, 100%. This goes to like the deep dark psychology, but not necessarily deep and dark, but you know, I would switch this with like there's the classic thing like ads don't affect me or marketing doesn't affect me. I never like think about ads I see on the TV. And it's really funny because there's this kind of this thing where it's like, okay, if you see a toothpaste ad and you go to the supermarket, but you don't remember the toothpaste ad at all, and there are two toothpastes next to each other and you don't really know the difference, you will choose the one you saw in an ad like 6 weeks ago and you won't remember it because it's influencing your subconscious. So just like people say ads don't matter, of course time and attention matters because your words, your way of communicating, your way of understanding the world is influencing them. And they think it's not, but it is. Everything we do influences us. And that's the way the brain works, is very malleable. So time and attention is super important. And if you do it well, which you kind of have to because people aren't going to give you their attention if you don't do it well, it's obviously the best the best possible way to sell and market yourself. And I think that the best, think of Imran Ghazi and how like he floods people's feeds or other people like this on Instagram, like, or whoever you follow, like their words are constantly going into your mind and constantly influencing you day on day. So choose wisely.
It's funny that you say that because my old boss and coworker used to always say, "Oh, marketing doesn't work. Marketing doesn't work." It says them using like drinking Starbucks, wearing Nikes. Like it's amazing that they think that they're somehow like isolated from it. Some people, but it's interesting because they kind of hit like what you were saying. Even though you don't want to necessarily be marketed to, it happens like subconsciously. But with that being said, where do people reach out if they would like to work with you or follow you?
So just my LinkedIn at the moment. So I'm sure you'll give them a link at the video or whatever. It's just Rebecca Nelson on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. I will drop that in there. Well, I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Sorry about the dog.
Oh, no worries.